Good morning, DC. How you doing?
Oh, doing great, Martin. How are you this morning?
Doing well. Sorry, I didn't mean to set you up. Were you doing like the LeBron James where you rest down the stretch? And
No,
so
I was more like on the inactive list. I have a nice vacation with my family, so I wouldn't like LeBron James. It doesn't come around that much.
All right. Well, DC, glad to have you back. Hopefully you and your family are refreshed and ready for the stretch we call spring ball and summer, where sometimes it gets kind of hard to find enough good stuff to talk about. But thanks to Coach Nick Saban and what he's been doing in this offseason, he gives us plenty to talk about. So I want to talk with you today about coaching, recruiting, spring practice, and we'll wrap things up with a little discussion on the hoops and Bama and Avery Johnson and what he has potentially with the win tonight, what I think potentially could happen for this basketball team. So I'll talk to you about that in just a few minutes. But, DC, let's get right into it. Hadn't had a chance to catch up with you since Nick Saban signed the recruiting class, the official last day of recruiting class, signing 3 big players. What's your overall assessment of this year's 2019 signing class?
Well, first of all, it's another great recruiting class, the number 1 class in the nation, signed the number 1 player, at least by one of the reporting agencies, is number 1 player in the nation. Just thought he did a great job of getting out there recruiting and closing with a big win over LSU, the sophomore signing, which I think that was a surprise to some. Some folks thought he was going to stay in state and go to LSU, but that was a really big. So I think overall, big when you're talking about the signing class. To look at it individually, I think he addressed some areas, defensive end, linebacker, offensive tackle, some of the best players in the nation there, signing with Alabama. Addressed the running back, losing 2 running backs to the NFL this time. Addressed the running back area. He signed, as we all know, 2 quarterbacks and a good kicker. I think that's probably going to be the one that's underestimated the most. I think the kicker that's coming in has a chance to really change the course of the place kicking duties at the University of Alabama. So I think that's important going down the stretch. I think kicking game is probably the weakest it's been since I can remember, since Saban has been here. That's it, kicking and punting. Not sure how he's going to address the punting. I guess we'll see if Skylar DeLong can come back and make a contribution after he's gotten a little stronger, maybe a little more into the process.
Do you think with the fact that he hasn't didn't go after a punter in this class at all, we haven't heard anything from a grad transfer. It's possible, I guess, there could still be some type of grad transfer or walk-on. But do you think maybe they've seen something in Skylar DeLong that they see in practice and they're just trying to get it to the point mentally where he can do it in the game?
Well, I think Coach Saban said that as much last year when Skylar DeLong was quote-unquote bench. But I think he said he sees in practice in him, just hadn't seen it translate to the game. So I think the people I've talked to in practice, he hit some really great punts, got some good air under them, does a good job in practice, just did not translate to the field. I think that comes with the mental part of being ready for this game and the pressure of punting in the SEC and with their people coming at you every down and the pressure that it gets on you. We became very, Alabama with J.K. Scott, we felt like that was just complacent. We were complacent about that job. You look back on the job he did while he was here at Alabama, it's kind of really unheard of. I don't think there was a better punter that I can remember that put Alabama in so many good field positions. And you're talking about how great defenses we had. Those great defenses were set up really good by some great field position by J.K. Scott. So we didn't have that with Skylar DeLong. And I'm hoping that what they're seeing in practice does translate back to the field this coming spring. We'll know more as we go through spring practice.
Speaking with DC Capstone Report, you can find it at dccapstonereport.com. DC, continuing on the recruiting conversation, when you look at this recruiting class, which one of these guys or position groupings do you think has the best opportunity to contrite as true freshmen?
Well, I think the outside linebacker, defensive ends, probably going to have the ability to come in. We're going to be weak there. I think they're going to have a chance to come in. I think Alfano may have a really chance to compete. Bogle compete for starting position for playing time. I think that was probably that, among other things, contributed to the on again, off again Yabi Anoma decision, whether to transfer or not transfer type thing. I think both of those guys coming in have a really good upside to contribute in the first year. I think inside linebacker is another position that has a chance to contribute too. So, in my opinion, I think it's on the defensive side of the ball, the people that we signed really have a chance to come in and play and contribute. And you can't really count out Trey Sanders. If he is what everybody says he is, of course, Alabama has proven that if you can run the ball, you can block. As a freshman, you'll get a chance to play, at least some in the game. So I think those are the three areas I see most being able to contribute in this coming year.
Speaking of Anoma, was that the biggest signee actually on signing day? Saban convincing him to stay in the fold and stay in the camp? Was that as big a get as any of the young talent that he signed?
I think it was important because he has a really great upside. Quickness, strength has really improved during this season. So I think that was a really big deal to get him to stay. And I don't think it was because he didn't want to compete.
Right.
It was twofold. I think he was homesick when he go back near his home. I think he really liked Coach Loxley. I think he was really deciding whether or not he wanted to transfer to Maryland or not and get back close to his family. So, but, always when you your coach signs two top 10 defensive ends, and that's your position, you probably have some questions in your mind of what is your place in the team. And I think after having a quick conversation with Coach Saban, they let him know that he was still a valuable asset to the team and had not moved on from him. So I think that kind of changed his mind to stay there.
All right. We're speaking with DC Capstone Report. DC, you said something that makes a question pop in my head. You said you believe that a lot of the guys who we signed on the defensive side of the ball has a really legitimate shot to compete and play. And to me, can we win a national championship with that many young guys? I'm going to get you to answer that, and then we'll switch over to this coaching staff and some spring ball. But think about that for a second during the break. If what we're all saying, that we're going to need these young defensive players to come in and play, can we win? Because literally we'll have to win 14 or 15 games. That's been proven. You're going to have to win 14 or 15 games to win a national title, barring some unforeseen season. Can Alabama do it with all of those young guys helping out on the defensive side of the ball? We'll talk about that and more right here on the Blitz. All right, DC, you said you're going to be getting to the coaches, so I'm going to ask you to give us a little preview of your thoughts there. But before we do that, you've mentioned it. I've said it. I've heard other broadcasters say it. I've heard producers say it. I heard everybody saying Alabama's going to Alfano and Battles and Sopsher and, Boygby and all these guys are going to probably have a legitimate chance, some of them to start, and Shane Lee and some of them contribute at a high level. Can Alabama, with that mixture of what we came off of last year and these guys being thrust into a leadership role in many cases, do you think this Alabama team can contend for a national championship?
I think we can, Martin. I think we've proven we can do that. I think we contended last year. I think we can do it because of two things, and I think we can really excel if one thing happens. Two reasons. One of those two things is we've got a good offense coming back, very mature, very well planned out. That's a score point that's going to help out a young defense. Two, we've got some defensive players that on the defensive line, some that were redshirted, that really have a potential to come in and be that Quinion Williams that we all didn't see coming last spring. We'll know more about that as the spring progresses. That's one thing we'll talk about next week, who these emerging players going to be that's already there. And I think we have a chance to really be a good defense. The other thing I think needs to happen, which is still a question mark, is I think our kicking game has to help our defense, and that's what yet to be determined. If all those things come together, I don't think we'll have a hard time of competing for a national title. I just really believe we have the offensive power there, and we have the defense that can really learn on the job, even as young players. These young players coming in are coming in with the ability to play and contribute, at least in spot duty. The only thing that concerns me is we're very thin on some positions on defense, and we don't have anybody that's that guy. In years past, we knew who the next alpha dog middle linebacker was going to be. But outside of Dylan Moses, who is that going to be this year? So I think that could a little bit. Yeah,
you mentioned emerging players. I'm going to ask you that question, kind of piggyback off of what you just stated when we get to the spring. When you say that we can do it with this defense, I guess the question becomes, what will be our philosophy then? Because last year, we kind of made up the decision early on. Saban said it, even in the public, which he hardly ever does, hey, that we're going to have to win different. Even though we're going to have a young defense, do you see Nick Saban with some of the hires he's made with his coaches, with Sarkisian coming back and getting, some of the guys he's gotten from the defensive side of the ball, do you see us, though, going back to Nick Saban saying, hey, we may have to start off leaning on this offense, but by the end of the season, we're going to be a defensive-led team? Or do you see us playing it out the way that we did last year just because we're so young?
I kind of think with the off-season hires and the things, I think the philosophy is going to shift a little bit toward more ball control. So I think early in the year, against some teams, you're going to see us offensively put up big numbers, and again, as we've done in the past. But I think when we get in some of these games that are going to be tight games, you'll see us help the defense by ball control and giving them less time on the field. So I think that'll be a little shift in our philosophy this year.
All right, let's get to that coaching staff. DC Capstone Report. You can find it at dccapstonereport.com. DC, what's your overall assessment of this particular coaching staff that Nick Saban has unofficially hired here at the Tide?
Well, I laugh, Martin, because I checked the official site right before we came on, and officially we don't have many coaches on the site right now.
Right.
Unofficially, we know he's hired a bunch of coaches. I don't think anything while I was gone, nothing was announced officially. And I checked their count this morning, and the Roll Tide count shows the coaches is a very limited number of coaches. So I think in my mind, if my math is correct, I think we have hired more coaches and more coaches on the staff than we have ability to have on the field coaches. So something's going to have to happen. I had thought all along that maybe Craig Kuklowski was not going to be around. I'd heard rumors that he was looking for something else, but on the site, 2019 coaches, it lists him as associate head coach and defensive line coach. So I know he's also been very instrumental in some of these signings, actually in some in-home visits with other coaches during the signing period this past February, this early February. So I'm not sure about that. It's very possible though that one of those coaches that are now listed on the staff might be moved to a more off-the-field position like Coach Saban has done in the past. So that's still a possibility as well. So
it's not over. We're going to see how that all plays out. What do you see as the biggest hire in terms of just kind of making an early assessment of this staff?
Well, I think going and getting the defensive line Harris from Mississippi State, I think, was a big hire. I think the wide receiver coach we got from West Virginia is a big hire, simply because I think what we've got here intact as an offense with the wide receivers we've got and what Josh Gaddis was able to do with them, I think that's a big hire. Come in behind him with a great recruiter and a good coach like that. So I think those are the two biggest hires coming in. Everybody talks about Sarkisian. I think he was a safe hire for Nick Saban. If the system comes in, I don't have anything bad to say about him. I think he can do good in the system here. But I think some of these other people that you think, well, who are they? They tend to be the ones that are the biggest hires. If you look back on last year, what Coach Saban was able to do. So I look for those to be the ones that make a big difference in the coaching staff.
Yeah, and I agree with those two as really big hires. I think is mission critical, and I'll get your thoughts on this. I think he sees some Kirby Smart, Jeremy Pruitt, and Golding, and he went out to surround him with guys who could teach him his system and teach him how to put together a game plan. I think Golding may be pretty good on game day if he has a strong plan. But last year, I don't think that defensive staff could put together a strong plan, and I think that's why he went out and got a Kelly who has a couple years in his system, Sunseri, who has numerous years in his system. And then, of course, he brings in Banks, who is a NFL guy who has watched probably more film than you and I have ever even thought about. And then, of course, Carl Scott, to me, did an unbelievable job with what he was handed last year. Was that about propping up Golding for the week's preparation or for game day?
Well, I think it was about getting preparation during the week. Last year, if you think about it, I think Tosh Lapoy did a great job of preparation during the week, but was not very good on game day making decisions. It seemed like Pete Golden took over assumed that role. But Pete Golden is young and doesn't really know much about Nick Saban's defense. He's had like a year under his belt in it. And these people he's bringing in, as you said, Martin, very smart on Coach Saban's part, bringing in coaches who know his system already and are good coaches,
right?
And can add a great support to a young defensive mind like Pete Golden. I think Coach Saban really likes Pete Golden.
Yes, I do too.
For Coach Saban to make a change mid-season, no one's really highlighted that. I think that is very telling that he really trusted Pete Golden to call those plays, and I think he's put a lot on him. Riding on his coming years as a defensive coordinator, and I really believe Coach Saban trusts him in that position, but wants to give him the best possible opportunity to succeed and surround him with some great coaches to do that. I think he's done that in his hires.
I think he really wanted to hire Pete Golden as the DC last year, but he couldn't afford to lose Tosh Lapoy, and I think that was as much about keeping someone as it was hiring the right guy, which Saban normally doesn't do. But we got a question from Gregory for you. Greg, you in with DC? What's your question?
Hey, DC, keep it envelopment, on our defense. Do we got a coach can know how to develop the players? And what do you think with like Martin said, with the newcomer coming in, got to fill in these roles, how our coaching defensive coaching staff, what their record show about envelopment.
All right. Thanks, Gregory. DC, go ahead. You got it.
Well, I think Kelly and Sunseri have a track record of developing players. I think if you look everywhere they've been, they have a track record of developing players. If you look at the defensive line at Mississippi State, you're talking about developing players. And Harris come in. That to me is the big hire. Because I know, and I'm not knocking Kuglowski. Kuglowski did a great job, I think, developing Quinn Williams, pulling him out last year. But you add another, and if Kuglowski stays, and you add another defensive mind that develops players like the way they did at Mississippi State last year, wow! I think that's the upside to our team this year. Might just be our defensive line.
Yeah, I agree with you, DC. That Banks is. Banks took 3 starts, and that's what Kuligowski was known for as well. But I just don't – I think it was a chemistry thing with Kuligowski and the staff and where he was at from what I've heard. But Banks, as a developer, Mississippi State's defensive line with 3 and 4-star, maybe 4-star talent has been as dominant for 3 years as anybody in the SEC, and that's Banks' time there. Plus, Banks has that NFL – There's a reason Tosh Lapoy was sent to the NFL to learn more, to learn football, so he doesn't have to worry about recruiting. Well, Banks, 19 years in the NFL. Think about this as we get ready to go to break, DC, is we have 2 coaches that had more coaching experience than I think our coaches had age, both DCs last year. Banks and Sunseri has over 65 years of coaching experience. at the college and pro level, I think. And I think our two DCs may have been 65 combined last year. So,
yeah.
Nick Saban definitely went from the youth movement to some experience. Will it pay off? We'll talk about what these guys can do in the spring to help Alabama get better, and then we'll close it out with getting our 3-point shot from DC regarding Bama hoops. All right, DC, we were going to break there. We got plenty of time to get to spring, so I just kind of asked one question based on something you said earlier in the program. You're talking about the emerging players. We've kind of – I did it yesterday with Mac Jones. It's kind of weird, and I think this speaks to the type of season we had. I totally forgot about Mac Jones being the quarterback at Alabama. I said we're going to go from Tua to a freshman. And I've done the same thing almost with the defensive players. And I think it was because we did such a poor job last year as a program and as a coaching staff of getting young guys in. We seem to think that we have Raekwon Davis and then the freshmen. But there's some other defensive linemen and defensive players. And who do you see as those guys that we'll talk about as we move throughout the spring?
Well, three players I'm high on defensively is Christian Barrymore, Stephon Wynn, and Dress Parks. I think those have opportunities to come in and contribute on defensive line, defensive end positions. Didn't play last year much, redshirted some. I think they potentially one of them to come in and be the Quinion Williams that we saw this year. I think Barrymore pretty much handled everybody when he was on the scout team. So I think everybody that watched him said, hey, this will be the next Quinion Williams. So I look for him to come in and make a contribution on defense.
All right. Well, we're going to get to, like you said, Barrymore, Wynn. Mathis played pretty well. He was one of the few guys that did get some reps. Interesting to see what's going to happen with Jerez Parks. We're going to see – go ahead.
Don't forget LeBron Ray as well. LeBron Ray, he played, though. He's not going to be a huge thing. And Mathis, both of them played. Darian Mathis.
Yeah.
But I was talking about people who just didn't play at all.
Right. So you're talking about the redshirt guys that were redshirted or injured and didn't get out there a lot. But we'll be talking more about that, DC. We'll probably highlight a couple players each week that we can look forward as we move closer to spring, be here before we know it. Let's flip the script and move over to a little hoops. I know you like basketball as much as I do. And Alabama, even though it wasn't against two great teams, they were finally able to get back-to-back wins and had the big game tonight against Mississippi State. Can Alabama piggyback off of the two wins and get that third win against Mississippi State?
Well, I think Alabama has a great chance to go in and get that win tonight. I think, people will say, well, Vanderbilt was a terrible team. Alabama hasn't won in Vanderbilt since 1991.
Yeah.
So it's an accomplishment to go in there.
You're right.
And I don't care what kind of team you're playing in that stadium, in that arena. I played basketball almost my life, and I know the type of it takes to go in and play in a place that's so strange like that. Like that arena, Alabama had like a little monkey on the back, couldn't win there.
Yeah.
I think that bodes well for this team going forward because of one thing. I think confidence. The confidence level of this team is higher, in my opinion, than any team that Alabama's had under Avery Johnson. I just think that because of these wins they get on the road, because of the games they played very close against Tennessee and then beating Kentucky at home, I think this team has the confidence they can go in and play and beat a team on the road now. I think coming up in the games, we've got 6-7 games remaining. I think we're favored in all but two of those games. So if we could pick up those we're favored in and it's not have a bad loss, I think that we really got a chance to really go do well in the tournament and get into the NCAA tournament as well.
Yeah, Alabama currently sitting at 15-8. Got Mississippi State tonight. DC, if Alabama were to get this win over Mississippi State, that would be 3 in a row. Then they have Florida at home, at Texas A&M, and then Vanderbilt at home. If they win this one, I believe this team could run off 6 games in a row. So since tonight's such a big key to that, I'm asking you, what's the 3-point shot? What's the 3 things that they have to do tonight to get that win over in Starkville?
Well, I think against Mississippi State, it's important. Number one, I think, is to have their spacing correctly when they set up their defense and offense. I think they're going to have to play and score points in the paint, limit their turnovers, and make a good amount of the 3-point shots to win this game on the road.
And then the final question I have, do they get the win? And, of course, I think we have to get to 70. I think they said we're like 14-3 or something when we score 70. Or no, 15-3, because we've not won a single game when we didn't score 70 points. So 15-3. Does Alabama get the win? And what do you have for a score?
Yeah, I think Alabama surprises everybody tonight. I think they go in there and they really have a good game against Mississippi State. And I think Alabama comes out of there with a victory. And I think the score's going to be 78-68.
All right. That's 78-68 from DC. DC, tell our listeners real quick, you're going to be back on the saddle this upcoming week with the podcast. Tell them where they can find it and where they can follow you.
That's right. This coming week, you can find us at dccapstonereport.com. You can also follow me at David Cott. That's DAVIDCOT 50, David Cott 50 on Twitter. Lance and I have got some great things planned for this coming year for the DC Capstone Report. We're putting up some great content. I hope everybody will start checking us out this coming week.
All right. That's DC Capstone Report, our weekly guest on Tuesday. Thanks, DC. Roll Tide and have a blessed day.
Thanks, Martin. Roll Tide.